My name is Samantha Macedo, Vice President of Prevention and Outreach at Partnership Against Domestic Violence. I'm also the Secretary of the Fulton County Family Violence Task Force. Today we will be discussing victim services and law enforcement. Victims of domestic violence remain in their relationships for many reasons. Fear is a number one reason, including fear of retribution, fear of losing their children, fear of having nowhere to live, and fear of being alone. In the current economic times, finances are also a major reason victims feel they cannot leave. In addition, domestic violence victims are at 75% greater risk of being killed when they are leaving the relationship. As frustrating as this may be for those responding to emergency calls involving family violence, these reasons are very real and valid for those trying to survive family violence. Law enforcement and advocates have seemingly different agendas. Law enforcement is mandated to respond to and investigate reported incidents of family violence. Their objectives are to immediately stop the violence, make the scene safe, investigate to determine if a crime was committed, attempt to determine the primary physical aggressor, make the appropriate arrest if applicable, and then complete the arrest and investigative reports.
I'm Myra Rasnick, Executive Director of Ahimsa House. Additionally, officers are mandated to discuss available services and remedies with victims of family violence. These include criminal justice system and other governmental services, as well as domestic violence programs and other non-governmental services. The primary focus of advocates is to help the survivor to be as safe as possible, to ensure that the survivor is given all of the resources she needs, and to empower her to make her own decisions. The goal for everyone involved is to provide safety for the victim and children and to hold the abuser accountable for their actions. Case studies reveal some family violence victims never access any service other than law enforcement. Staying with an abuser may be a survival strategy for some victims. In many of these cases, law enforcement has the opportunity to provide information on available resources to survivors. If they are able to leave, or even if they feel they must stay. Fatality review findings in Georgia show that domestic violence fatality victims had reached out to law enforcement at a rate close to 80% within the 5 years prior to the homicide, while those same victims reached out to community resources, such as domestic violence programs, at a rate of just under 20%.
Hey, my name is Laura Carter. I am the outreach specialist at Tapestry. Since victims who are still in the relationship have more contact with law enforcement than service providers, law enforcement has a unique opportunity to empower victims of domestic violence with information about resources needed to keep themselves and their children safe. Victim safety is greatly increased when they access resources other than just law enforcement and the criminal justice system.
My name is Juana Perez and I work at Caminar Latino program. Most people, including law enforcement, view domestic violence program only as a battered women's shelters and have an emergency response mentality associated with intervening in situations of family violence. Domestic violence programs offer many services beyond emergency shelters.
Hi, my name is Lanya Jeter, and I'm the shelter manager at Partnership Against Domestic Violence. Partnership Against Domestic Violence provides services to anyone experiencing intimate partner violences. Our services include a 24-hour crisis line, emergency safe house, legal advocacy, including assistance with applying for TPOs, a parenting program, community support groups for women, a teen dating violence program, supportive housing program, community education, and assistance with access to Supplementary Nutrition Assistance Program, other known as SNAP, and other public benefits. The Safe House is a confidential location. The person seeking help can call the crisis line, where an advocate will conduct a telephone assessment. Once the assessment has been done, the client will receive directions to a confidential drop-off location, where a staff member can pick them up. If the client has their own transportation, they will be given directions to the Safe House location. Our program operates 24 hours a day. So if the caller needs help in the middle of the night, they will be assisted. If the law enforcement is involved, They will be able to bring the client directly to the facility upon completion of the telephone assessment. All services provided at no cost to the victim. Women and children escaping domestic violence can stay at the PADV Safe House for up to 90 days. Yes, PADV accepts women and their children. The mothers accepted with their children up to the age of 21. Partnership Against Domestic Violence cannot accept minors unaccompanied by their mothers. While child care is not provided on site, we will assist in connecting the client with services that meet their individual needs. PADV has children's programs run by the Family Children's Advocate at the Safe House. Many of our residents and children attend school in the previous local school district, while Atlanta Public Schools assist in providing public transportation. While our Safe House is only for women and their children, PADV does provide services to males and members of the LBGT community. Individuals can leave the shelter at any time. As long as there weren't serious breaches of shelter rules or security, there is no limitation on how many times someone can return to the shelter or community-based services. If the abuser finds out where she is and comes to the shelter, the client can be relocated to another confidential shelter if she is in danger. An advocate will work with the client to update her safety plan and refer her to a legal advocate if she needs to obtain a temporary protective order, otherwise known as a TPO, to secure her safety and the safety of her family. If the abuser shows up at the shelter, law enforcement will be called for trespassing or charges related to violating a protective order if an order is in place. Due to our confidentiality policies, PADV is not allowed to confirm or deny if someone is in our shelter or even if law enforcement is calling to ask. There are also several other agencies in Fulton that offer specialized services to particular populations of victims or /perpetrators.
Ahimsa House is an organization that addresses the link between family violence and animal cruelty. We offer safe housing for pets while their owners seek safety for themselves, regardless of whether they are entering shelter or staying elsewhere. Our services are available to victims anywhere in Georgia and at no charge. We can assist with any number or type of animal. Victims, law enforcement, and service providers can access services via our 24-hour crisis line.
Caminar Latino or Latino Journey is a Georgia's first and only comprehensive domestic violence intervention program for Latino families. We help victims of domestic violence by offering support groups for women and children in Spanish, parenting classes, assistance with applying for temporary protective orders, assistance with accessing shelters, legal services and counseling services, crisis intervention and advocacy, and accompaniment to court. We also offer court-ordered Parents intervention classes in Spanish.
Hello, my name is Aparna Bhattacharya and I'm the Executive Director of Raksha. Raksha, which means protection in many South Asian languages, is a Georgia-based nonprofit for the South Asian community. We provide services to adult and child victims of family violence and sexual violence to ensure that they have access to safety, justice, and healing. Raksha also works to educate attorneys, law enforcement, and service providers on working with immigrant survivors and the importance of using interpreters. When a victim is an immigrant, they often face additional barriers to leaving their abusive relationships and seeking help from the criminal justice system. Raksha provides services in multiple languages, including Hindi, Gujarati, Bangla, Tamil, and Telugu.
Tapestry is a nonprofit organization that began in 1996. We strive to provide culturally competent services to immigrant and refugee communities, and all of our programs are victim-centered. Our office provides services for 3 different programs: domestic violence, human trafficking, and batterer intervention program. Our domestic violence program provides referrals to other community resources, such as shelters and housing, food, English classes, and immigration attorneys. The advocates offer assistance with civil matters, such as obtaining protective orders and child custody. Our human trafficking program also provides referrals and services according to each client's needs. Lastly, our men's program facilitates a 24-week court-ordered intervention program for batterers. Please keep in mind that the cause of a domestic disturbance might actually be human trafficking. Many times men and women are promised a well-paying job, a better education, or marriage and a family. Often children are lured into trafficking situations after they've run away from an abusive home and promised a glamorous life, fast money, a romantic relationship, or just a safe place to stay for the night. According to state and federal law, if someone under the age of 18 is working in the commercial sex industry, the minor should be considered a victim of human trafficking.
Survivors of abusive relationships face many obstacles to successfully and safely leave the relationship. Law enforcement has a key role in not only emergency response to incidents, but also empowering victims with the information that allows them to access the resources to help them and their families achieve safety. It is well documented in communities where the criminal justice system and other service providers work collaboratively. Domestic violence crimes are reduced, domestic homicides are reduced, and victims are more likely to safely separate from abusive relationships.